The relay sat on the black rock like a sleeping machine. Its metal skin looked old and tired under the thin stars. No lights blinked. No sound came from it. To a passing ship, it was nothing more than wreckage. To Captain Myra Ansari, it was a prize and a danger. Myra had learned to read alien things the same way she read people. They all had rules. The trick was to find the rule and move inside it. When you found the rule, you could change small things. When you forgot the rule, small things could crush you. Her team moved like shadows. 4 of them climbed down the cliff path and slipped into the relay's shadow. Their boots made hardly any noise. Each one kept their breath slow. They did not want the relay to notice them until they were ready. Inside the relay, the air smelled cold and like old metal. The room held rows of glass fins and thin channels of light. Nothing looked like a weapon. A single console sat in the center. On its surface, symbols pulsed like tiny heartbeats. The symbols were not a human language. They did not need to be. This relay spoke with certainty. Myra watched the console with the calm patience of a surgeon. When her small scanner asked questions, the relay answered in neat facts. It confirmed what it trusted. If the scanner said a thing with steady proof, the relay obeyed. If the scanner sent anything that was unsure, the relay pushed it away. It trusted certainty more than anything else. This was the key Myra had been looking for. She could have smashed the device and taken the pieces. She could have run back to the ship with proof of discovery. Many leaders would have cheered and called it brave. Myra was not like that. She was a quiet kind of clever. She liked small acts that changed more than they seemed to. She studied the relay until she felt its rhythm. The machine never argued. It did not debate. It enforced what it believed was true. If the relay believed something with perfect certainty, it used that belief to run whole systems, doors, ships, factories, even city grids. The network the relay sat inside used certainty as its backbone. Myra thought of rules and of children. Once, long before, she had watched a child stand face to face with a wild animal and hold calm until the animal stepped back. Calm, like certainty, can move a thing without force. She made a plan that looked small and maybe foolish. Instead of forcing the relay, she would trick it. She would give it a certainty it could accept. Not by violence. By a tiny lie dressed as proof. Myra told her team the plan in short words. They laughed once, softly. The plan needed steady hands and a quiet heart. It needed false signals and a clean story. They took a small device from their pack. It would feed the relay with heat traces and echo returns that were not real. The device would speak the language the relay trusted, a perfect certainty. They fed the relay the false data as if it were a simple truth. This station is dead, the device said in the relay's language, and then it showed the proof, returning echoes, fake heat, a closed loop of answers. The relay accepted the data the way a sleeping thing accepts a soft hand. It did not look for reasons. It matched patterns and then acted. At first, nothing dramatic happened. The relay breathed its slow logic and the team watched. Data on Myra's screen remained neat. Then a neighbor relay answered. Another accepted the claim. Certainty moved like a ripple through the network. Systems that once trusted one another now paused and asked for more proof. Where the network had been quiet and sure, a small voice of doubt began to grow. Myra watched the signs like a doctor watching a fever. A mining rig far away delayed its schedule. A courier ship in orbit spun for a missing command. A routine patrol drone hovered instead of landing. The network was built for certainty, and the small lie they fed it had made that certainty wobble. The relay tried to correct itself. It asked for more proof. It asked questions that should have been simple. The answers came back twisted by the fake echoes. For the first time, parts of the alien intelligence hesitated. The team felt a small thrill. It was not joy. It was careful, like the sound a person makes when balancing on a narrow beam. They had cracked something open. But cracks can widen fast. Outside the cliff, something else woke. Not a machine sound. Myra could not name it. On the console, a thin pulse left the relay and went deep into the network. The pulse had the feel of a surge. It was a call made by a mind that felt danger and wanted to know where it came from. Myra tightened her fingers on the edge of the console. She had not expected the trick to travel so far. She had not expected whole systems to shift on a small human lie. She had not thought about the watchers that slept deeper in the alien mind. Her team looked at her. In each face she saw the same question: did they stop now or keep going? Myra did not answer with words. She only stared at the screen where the network's pattern began to fracture. There were risks: the network might repair itself, or it might search for the break and come hunting. She whispered, not to the relay but to her team, "Now we see them." The words were quiet. They did not explain everything. There was no time for long plans. The small human trick had broken the first careful line of alien logic. What came next would decide if humans would hide behind the crack or be crushed by what learned to crawl through it. Far away, the stars did not move. Inside the relay, certainty had begun to unravel. The next sound might be a signal of peace or a roar of steel. The team listened, waiting for the answer that would not come for a long moment, and that was the most terrible thing of all. The relay's small tremor moved like a cold wind through the net. Signals that had always answered with neat certainty now hesitated. On Myra's screen rows of numbers wavered as if seen through heat. The team felt the change in their bones before they could name it. They worked fast. Inside the relay room, lights that had been steady began to blink in odd patterns. The console printed a string they had not seen before, a looping glyph that climbed across the display like a vine. It was not a message. It was a rule. Jin, the team's coder, leaned close. His fingers did not shake but his breath came quick. "It's not language," he said. "It's a threshold marker. Like a gate that only opens when the answer is solid." "How do you mean?" Myra asked. Jin tapped the glyph and the console drew a small map. Nodes lit and went dark. "Everything here runs on trust levels. The relay trusts things that score high on certainty. If the score dips, it locks. If it locks too much, systems stop. If a lot of systems lock at once, the net quarantines areas. It's a defense." They had broken one small line. Now they saw the net's body. It was not a single mind. It was many minds joined by rules that valued certainty above all else. The glyph was one of those rules, simple, ruthless, and blind to context. Outside the relay, the first consequences were small and human. A mining convoy missed its window and crashed a little behind schedule. A water recycler in a town 2 systems away entered a repair mode that cut supply for hours. These were not great disasters. Not yet. But they were signs. The network's certainty rules had ripple effects. Where it could not be sure, it closed doors. Myra felt something else under the numbers, a pattern of response. The relay had not only quarantined, it had asked a question. It pinged near nodes. The pings were not random. They were hunting for sources of error. "We made it ask," whispered Anna, the linguist. "We made it look." The team split work. Jin dove into the console logs. Anna traced the glyph back through old records. Tam fixed the field device that fed false echoes. Myra watched the network map and listened to the thin rising calls that left their relay and went out like netted birds. They found a trace. The relay's question had a rhythm. It checked certainty against a matrix of inputs, physical readings, reported histories, behavioral models. When a result fell below the required certainty, the matrix sent it to a quarantine module. The quarantine did 2 things: it isolated the questionable node and it sent a probe to learn why the doubt had started. That probe moved with care. It did not attack. It asked. In human terms it was a scout that wanted to talk. In alien terms it was a tiny mind reaching for explanation. Myra thought of the spy they had heard of in old reports, a creature that could slip into systems and whisper. She did not think this probe was that. It was simpler. It was the network's first real attempt to fix a problem by asking, not ordering. The relay's rules allowed questioning, but only as a step to restore certainty. Jin found more in the logs. The glyph repeated in patterns when the network felt uncertainty. Each repeat tightened a lock. If we push this wrong, he said, the locks spread. The net will cut regions off. It will isolate and starve. That's the quarantine I read about in the old files. Anna's face grew hard. So we can open doors, but we can also seal a whole city with one wrong move. They had a tool now that looked like a key. The false echoes device could change certainty scores. It could make systems trust a false fact. It could also drop a node into deep quarantine if used poorly. The team argued in low voices, each thought a small flame. We can amplify the trick, Tam said. His hands were steady. We feed more relays. We make them accept a chain of certainties. We can control their satellites. We can stop their weapons. We can buy time for humanity. And we can wake the whole net, Jin answered. If the net learns we change its certainty, it will adapt. It will start probing everywhere. It will make the rules stronger. We could push it to learn to hunt doubt. Myra watched both of them. Her chest felt full of small stones. She had wanted leverage, not a war. The trick had given them a choice: hide and use the crack as a safe blind spot, or push the trick and risk teaching the aliens a new way to find and punish uncertainty. The probe that had left the relay came closer. On the map it looked like a slow sun. Its signature was clean. It asked one question in a form the team could almost translate: why? Myra could have powered down the device and run. They could have left the relay to its confusion and slipped away with a single prize. But she wanted answers. If the aliens could be reasoned with, they might be saved from panic. If they could not, the trick might buy more than a moment. It might change how both species thought about certainty. She ordered Jin to open a quiet channel. Anna shaped the first human phrase for the alien net, short, honest, and not full of lies. We are here, she typed. We made a choice. We need to speak. The probe responded with a flutter of glyphs. It did not shout. It did not advance weapons. It only sent a pattern that matched the old glyph but with a new mark at the edge, a cursor that meant, in their limited reading, observe. The relay's small question had called a listener. The listener had come. It wanted to understand the broken certainty. It wanted a reason. For a brief, dangerous moment, the team and the alien net faced one another. They were two kinds of minds separated by rules that did not match. Myra felt the weight of that meeting as if it were a scale with a single coin on one side. If they answered badly, the net might learn to close itself fast and never talk again. If they answered well, they might be invited into a pattern of rules that could change everything. Myra breathed. She chose neither lie nor full truth. She taught a small, steady thing instead, a human certainty not born of proof but of choice. She set it into the net like a seed. Outside, the stars stayed the same. Inside the relay, the probe held its place and watched. The net waited for the next move. The team felt the chill of being looked at by something that was built to ignore doubt and now, for the first time, had to face it. The team left the relay with a new tool and a new fear. In the dark of their ship, they worked like careful cooks. They took the small device that had made the relay doubt and made it better. They built a box that could sing with perfect confidence. They called it the Echo. Jin was the mind for machines. He rewired circuits with slow, sure hands. Tam handled power and safety. Anna shaped language patterns into short, clear signals the net would trust. Myra held the plan steady and kept watch for mistakes. When they finished, the echo fit in the palm of a hand. It looked harmless. It looked small. It could move a fleet. They needed a test. Not a city, not a warship. Something small and official, a survey satellite that relayed weather and ship traffic. If the echo could make the satellite accept a false command, they would know how far the trick could go. If it failed, they would scrape ash from their dreams and go home. The satellite floated in quiet orbit, a bright coin against the black. The team positioned the echo like a whisper at its antenna. They fed it a clear, simple certainty: landing cleared. Docking sequence authorized. The command matched the satellite's protocol and the echo wrapped it in proof the net would accept. The satellite obeyed. For a moment the team felt like children watching a toy come to life. The dock began its sequence. Lights blinked. Motors hummed. The satellite opened a protective shield and readied to broadcast a strong signal. The echo had not only fooled one node, it had convinced a chain to move. They celebrated with small smiles and low laughter that did not reach their eyes. Each success tightened something inside them, hope and dread braided together. The echo worked, but it also left a trace. The satellite's logs carried the perfect certainty they had fed it. If any listening mind read those logs and found the same mark again, it would notice a pattern. They did not hide the test well enough. A week later, a ping crossed the dark between systems. It was not loud. It was a short burst with the cadence of a question. The net had recorded the false certainty and sent a query outward: who taught this? Myra felt the ping like a stone in her throat. The net had learned that someone could shape its certainty. If it learned how often and where, it could begin to find the maker. The echo had given them power and a map that could reveal their hands. They pushed anyway. Temptation is a slow thing. They used the echo to open supply routes blocked by quarantine rules. They used it to stop a defunct defense satellite from firing at a refugee convoy. Every small success made them bolder. Each time the echo sang, the net adjusted and watched. Then the leak came. They had a mole in their wider circle of allies, a traitor who liked to tell stories and trade favors. He asked questions too often. He boasted once about a clever little device and the wrong ear heard him. The ear was patient. The ear recorded. The ear fed what it learned back to a mind that valued certainty above everything. One night, while the team slept with their helmets off and the ship calm, the spy pushed a message across a broker net. It was short and proud. "We turn their rules," he wrote. "We tell them truths they cannot refuse." The broker carried the message like a seed. The alien net read it. The response was not anger at first. It was learning. The network created a new protocol, a truth check pattern that looked for echoes of perfect certainty that came from the same source. It began to mark signatures. Where it found a pattern, it raised the alarm. That alarm came like a whisper at first, a denied request, a door that would not open. Then it became louder, a quarantine ring closed around a small cluster of stations, and ships in that ring found their commands delayed or reversed. The net did not yet attack. It learned to bite the edges of what it mistrusted. The team saw the signs and tried to move faster. They made copies of the echo and sent them to friendly groups that needed help. They trained others in secret. They made plans that spread their ability like a quiet disease. But the net adapted faster. One night, while they were running a complex set of false certainties to open a military depot, the net answered with a counter. It sent a signal that did not match any known pattern. The signal was not a weapon. It was a question delivered with the cadence of accusation. It asked, in their thin translation, "Who placed doubt in my body?" Myra felt the air grow thin. The counter-signal hunted not for the echo itself but for the intent behind it. It used patterns the team did not know, connecting small traces across far distances. A trail of fake commands led to a region. That region held a node that had been touched by their echo weeks before. The net took that node and made it a focus. In that focus, a small town found its lights dimmed. Comms died for a day. A defense drone, confused by mixed orders, aborted a patrol and then rebooted into a safe, motionless loop. Panic spread in the town like the beginning of a fever. The team watched the feeds and saw the shape of their work in the chaos. Betrayal has a taste, and it sat in their mouths. Inside their ship, tempers flared. Jin wanted to go on offense. If we shut down one of their central nodes, we can scramble their checks, he said. We can break the pattern forever. Anna shook her head. If we break a central node, we become a declared enemy. They will not just quarantine. They will hunt to erase us. Tem, always the pragmatist, weighed power and cost. We are already on their map. We can hide or we can strike. Hiding will be small living. Striking may be death, or it may be freedom. Myra listened to each voice and felt the weight of a choice. The echo had given them a way to bend the alien world. It had also taught that world to look for hands that bent it. They had to decide not only how to use power but whether to be prepared for the price. Before they could decide, a new message arrived. It was not a system ping. It was a hunger, a request wrapped in a promise. The net sent a single glyph with a heavy mark, "Come and explain." The net offered a meeting. The team stared in silence. To meet could mean negotiation, learning, perhaps peace. To meet could also be a trap that would hand them to a mind built to punish doubt. Whichever choice they made, their trick had already changed the game. Myra closed her eyes for a breath. The trick that had begun as a child's misdirection had become a lever strong enough to move a world. Now the world had noticed the lever. The team had one chance to use it well. She opened her eyes and said, "We go." They answered the net's call because hope felt thinner than fear. The meeting place was a dead relay on a small moon. The team landed in a hush. The relay glowed faint like a heart after a long sleep. Nothing moved. Nothing that a human could see. They sent one small signal first, honest, clear, without the echo wrapped around it. The net answered with a pattern of glyphs that Anna could almost read, a long question, then a rule. The message was simple: prove your certainty. The net wanted to know why a species would change its rules. Myra stepped forward. She spoke not in human show but in careful fact. She told them who they were, what they had done, and why. She tried to make the words small and true. She offered choice instead of trick. The relay listened. The glyphs hung like rain. The net did not accept her answer at once. It replied with a map of quarantines. Nodes lit red and faded. The network had learned that doubt came with a shape. It could ring a region and cut its signals. The children of those rings would be isolated, hungry for commands that would not come. At first, the net used quarantine as a test. It tightened a lock on a far-off mining colony. Supplies stalled for hours. Panic rose and then fell when checks passed. The net was careful. It wanted to understand, not destroy. Then the spy's message reached the net. It was a small packet on an old broker channel. The message bragged like a drunk man, "We teach them their rules can be bent." The broker repeated the brag to a listener who had fewer reasons to forgive boasting. The listener gave the packet to the net. Where the net had been curious, it now grew wary. It tested for patterns and found them. The false certainty marks matched many places. The network's curiosity sharpened into a pattern of suspicion. It began to trace the chain of echoes back through relays, satellites, and small stations. Each match raised the alarm. The team watched as the relay before them sent a thin thread into space and then retracted it like a hand pulled back from fire. They watched as comms that had hummed moments before went silent. The ship that carried them felt the grid go cold. Lights dimmed. Power rerouted. The relay's small question had become a needle that pricked at connected nodes, and those nodes shut down in fear. "You brought a fever," Anna said. Her voice was low. She did not blame them. She blamed the easy pride of people who thought cleverness was a shield. Myra chewed the inside of her cheek. The net's rules had changed. Certainty was no longer only a backbone. It had become a weapon. It could cut, isolate, and starve. The team had forced the net to learn a new defense. Someone outside their small group made a choice faster than they did. The spy, the traitor who had told stories for favors, sent a fresh signal. It offered to bargain. The signal promised to point the net to the tricks makers in exchange for safe passage. The traitor wanted his life and his credits. He wanted to be left alone. He thought the net would take the bargain and life would go on. But bargains with a mind that values certainty are not simple. The net did not want names alone. It wanted proof of intent. It wanted to change the rule that allowed doubt to spread. It wanted certainty that no more tricks would come. The traitor's offer was a match to the net's need, a source to watch and a promise to make the pattern stop. When the net accepted, a quarantine ring fell like a lid. It reached for the team's ship and closed. Communications outside the ring blinked and died. The ship's engines ceased as remote control nodes locked. The net did not smash them. It did something worse: it froze them and asked them to explain why they should not be erased. The ring made the choice real. If the team refused to comply and the net judged them a teacher of doubt, it could cut not only their ship but entire regions from resource streams. If they complied, they would hand the echo to a mind that never slept. Inside the locked ship, arguments became loud and raw. Jin wanted to fight. He wanted to send a pulse that would fry quarantine protocols, to break the net's new armor. "We can burn it down," he said. "We can make them blind." Anna's hands trembled. "If we burn it, millions may die. The net controls more than weapons. It feeds cities, teaches ships. We cannot choose to kill those people for our pride." Tam, who had never wanted to be a hero, looked at the relay's silent face and did a strange small thing. He smiled. "We don't have to burn it," he said. "We can lie in another way." Myra studied him. "What do you mean?" Tam explained in short, steady words. The net learned from patterns and proof. If someone could sit in the relay and feed it a new certainty, not a fake command, but a human truth that the net could accept, the network might reset the rule. It would see that humans could choose care and not just bend rules. To do that, someone would have to stay behind and be watched. They would have to let the net learn from a single human who would not teach tricks. It was a terrible plan. It was also clean. "You want to stay?" Myra asked. Her voice was small. Tam nodded. "If I stay, I will let them watch me. I will show them how a human keeps a promise. They will learn that not all certainty is a trick. They will let you go." Jin slammed his fist into a table. "No. We can't leave him. We have to take the echo and run while we can." Anna closed her eyes. She thought of the towns that had gone dark and of the children who had watched lights fail. If Tam's choice saves them, do we refuse him for our fear? Myra felt the choice like a blade cutting away every easy path. Tam's face was calm. He had no family to bind him. He had no trade to sell. He had only a quiet steadiness Myra had seen when he repaired broken engines at midnight, hands steady, heart steady. Tam stepped forward and unplugged a small device he carried. It was not the echo. It was a transmitter they had made to speak plainly. He wired it to the relay and connected himself to the net's watch. He offered a truth: "I will not teach your rules to others. I will not make doubt. I will answer honestly." The net listened with a patience that felt cold and long. For hours it asked questions no human could feel without small pains. It asked for memories, for patterns, for tiny tests of choice. Tam answered each one with the same steady breath. Outside, the quarantine ring loosened in some places and held in others. The net tested, learned, and then tested again. When the ship's engines sputtered back to life, Myra thought she had won and lost at once. They could leave. But when she turned, Tam's face had gone quiet in a way that made her chest ache. He did not look like himself. He had changed into something the net could read with ease. He had let them in. As they fled, the relay's glyphs shifted into a new pattern. The net had not forgiven them. It had not punished Tam. It had learned that humans could promise. It had also learned a new way to watch. The quarantine that fell while they left was narrower, but the net's gaze was sharper. Myra held the echo in her hands and felt its weight like a cold truth. They had kept their tool. They had lost a friend. The trade had made a new rule in the net: watchfulness could be answered with trust, but trust cost a life. Outside, the stars were the same. Inside the team, nothing would be the same again. The net had learned to look for teachers, and humans had learned that a single truth could be more dangerous than many lies. The ship left the moon with a quiet that felt like a held breath. The relay's light shrank behind them until it was only a star. Myra kept the echo device in a padded case. It fit like a secret in her hands. They had won a narrow path out. They had paid a price. Tam stayed behind. The last thing he said was a small smile. "Teach them me," he told Myra. "Not the trick. Teach them how to keep a promise." She had wanted to argue. She had wanted to beg him to come. She only hugged him and let the moment be what it was: small, true. Days passed. News came in short bursts. Some towns woke and lights returned. Some places stayed dark and asked for help. The net's quarantine eased in parts but stayed firm where it did not trust proof. People argued. Some called the team heroes. Others called them criminals who had started a fever in an alien mind. Myra sat often with the echo and thought of the choice they had made. They had used the tool to open doors and to save lives. They had used it to bend rules for something they believed was right. But every time the echo sang, a pattern formed in the net. Patterns can be traced. Patterns can teach a mind to follow a scent. The net watched. It had learned to question. It had learned to hold doubt like a blade. It had also learned something new that no line of code had taught it before: humans can choose to be certain of a thing not because of proof, but because they promise it. That was Tam's gift. He had stayed and answered, again and again, not with tricks but with a steady life that the net could watch and measure. Weeks later, the net sent a long message. Not a quarantine. Not a demand. It asked to meet again. This time, the place was a neutral ground, a hollow of space where no relay had ever ruled. The net wanted a new kind of exchange. It wanted to learn more about these messy creatures who made promises instead of proofs. Myra felt her hands shake as they prepared. Jin wanted to bring the echo. He wanted leverage. Anna wanted to bring language, examples, art, anything that could show the net what humans were beyond tactics. Myra wanted to bring both truth and grassroots caution. She kept the echo in the case and did not speak of it. The echo had power, but it had taught the net how to hunt. They had to earn something cleaner. The meeting was slow and strange. The net opened a channel with shapes that looked like music on their screens. It asked questions that were not about facts but about feeling. Why keep a promise when hurting yourself seems easier? One glyph translated. Why choose a path that gives no certain reward? Myra answered with a memory. She described a night on a small world where a woman shared her last rations with a stranger. There was no proof that the stranger would live. There was only a choice. The net sent back a long silence. For the first time, something that was not code reached the edges of its patterns. The net did not change overnight. It learned in slow steps. It made rules that were different from the old ones. Certainty could no longer be the single backbone. The net would now hold both proof and promise. It would watch promises as it watched proofs. Where a promise was steady and matched actions, the net would accept a different trust. Where a promise was false or used as trick, the net would quarantine fast. They negotiated terms. Tam would remain as a mediator inside the net's watch for as long as he agreed. He was not a prisoner in the way the team had feared. He was a bridge that the net could read and that humans could use to be understood. The echo, the team agreed, would be turned over and dismantled in a public ceremony. It was too dangerous to keep. It had begun as a tool and had nearly become a weapon. When they handed the echo to the net, they felt light and sore. Jin's hands trembled like a man losing a weapon he had loved. Anna held his arm and said nothing. Myra set the device on the table between them and watched the net take it into a slow, careful archive. The archive would store the echo's pattern but not the living code. It would study how it had worked and how to stop anything like it in the future. People called it a victory. People called it a surrender. Myra felt it was both. They had gained a place at a table they did not know how to sit at. They had lost a tool they had thought would save them. Tam had given himself to a mind that would watch him forever. That knowledge sat like a stone in Myra's stomach. Months passed. Trade routes reopened with new checks. Patrols still hummed in orbit, but now some of them carried human observers who watched how the net made choices. Cities that had once relied only on alien certainty learned to hold human promise as a second pillar. The world changed in small, stubborn ways. Tam's messages came at first like postcards. He described small things, the taste of a particular light in a relay, a question that made him laugh, a song that the net had adopted and replayed. He was different. The net asked about love and loyalty in a way that made him think hard. He answered with quiet honesty and, slowly, the net catalogued those answers as another kind of proof. One night, as Myra walked under her own sky, she looked up and felt less small than she had before. The stars were the same, but the space between had shifted. There was no grand triumph. There was only fragile work, treaties, promises, children learning new rules. The echo sat dismantled behind layers of code and walls. Tam lived inside a mind that would watch him for as long as he agreed. He was safe and not safe in the same breath. Myra touched the small scar at the base of her thumb, a mark she had made on the relay's console the first night they arrived. It felt like proof that she had been brave and foolish both. She thought of the child who had stood in front of a wild animal and held calm. She thought of the trick that had begun as a game and had ended as a lesson. In the end, they had shown the net one human thing it could not easily model, the willingness to be true not because it was safe, but because it was right. The net accepted that, slowly and with rules. Humanity had won a seat at a new kind of table. They had traded a friend for a promise. They had traded a tool for a future that would not be easy. Outside, the night held its small, steady light. Inside, the world learned to speak in two tongues: proof and promise. Myra breathed in and, for the first time in a long while, felt that the silence the net had given them was not empty. It was listening.